Hi everybody, Mark Kirby again. Back to Accounting 6, Spreadsheets for Accounting. Tonight I want to talk about some Excel tools, tricks, formulas, and things that you could use for Chapter 15 in the book. Basically this lecture goes along with Chapter 15. So, just quick reminders before we get going. One, here I've got Excel in front of me. Again, it's the 2007 version. I've put my name up in the corner. I would expect you to put your name up in the corner on your homework, but since this is mine, I've got my name up there. Down at the bottom, I've renamed the tab. Again, this is done with a right click. Hit the rename button, and you can rename the tab. So I'm working on problem, and I made this up, okay, so don't think this matches anything right out of the book, but problem 15.1a. When I save this, when I do the file save as, I would get my name and the chapter number in the file name. So that way when you submit your homework to me electronically, I know whose it is and I know which chapter it's for, okay? Those are things we talked about in the first couple of videos, but just a quick reminder. I'll probably keep reminding you. So, things I want to talk about tonight. Formulas. I think we brushed on this briefly in the previous video. Notice up at the top, we've got the Home tab is where Excel typically starts. I'm going over to the Formula tab tonight. We're going to do a lot of work in the Formula tab in this class. I can insert a function here, or I can come and look up formulas under their categories. Financial formulas, logical formulas, date and time, math and trig, lookup and reference. Tonight I'm doing logical formulas. We're going to do an if. I could come over here and I could just click on the if, and it brings up the function helper. This looks just like the function helper in the older versions of Excel. It's still there. The other thing you could do is insert function, and here's the old insert function box. I could come pick if right here and just select it. I'd end up back where I was a moment ago. Let's say I don't know the function I'm looking for. I could type in if and tell it go, and it's going to go find if. Notice it floated right to the top. Select it, click OK, I'm back where I was. As we've said in Excel, if there's one way to do something, there's probably 3 or 4. So there's several ways to do it. So here's the if function, and the if function is great to test something. Here's where we start getting Excel to make some decisions for us. Please remember, the goal of this class is to automate our spreadsheets so that it does some decision making for us, and we can then pass off the spreadsheet to a lower level of employee who can just enter data in an input section and on a month after month basis, and it chugs out the right answer. They hit the print button, a report comes out, everything's good. Okay? So let's talk about this a little bit more. Let's do some if. Blue, red, green, oops, spell it right, yellow, orange. Okay? So I'm going to put a number with these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Typical thing you'd see in the world, there's a list and they're all in order. So what I want to do is, let's say this is my input field. So I'm going to mark my input field. Maybe I want to go a little lighter than that. Input. So I've got an input field here. and let's say my input is I want red. So I'm looking for red. Now I'm going to use Excel to tell me the corresponding number that goes with red. All right, we're all bright enough to go over here and look and go, oh, the number's 2. But do I want to have to go through this every time and look it up? What if I had a list that was 3,000 or 4,000 items long and I had to go through and find the exact item in column B and find the corresponding number in column A? If it was 3,000 items long, this would be a bummer if I had to do it over and over again. So we're going to use this tool. Input is red, output, or let's see, order number. This is my output. Let's say I'll just underline that. So how do I get Excel to figure this out for me? Well, remember we had our formulas, and there's a simple if function. I'm going to do this 2 ways. I'm going to hit the if function, and I'm going to use the function wizard to figure this out. So if, I'm going to click on the cell, D1 equals, and I'm just going to make this simple, B6, then what do I want it to do? Value if true equals A6, else value if false. I'm just going to type in the word false. Okay? So, logical test. What's the test? Is D5 equal to B6? And it tells you already that the answer is true. It knows that this is a true thing. Value of true equals A6. So it's telling you that the answer right now is equals A6. Value of false is it's going to put the word false in there. And it tells you right here the outcome it's going to get. If I hit go, if I hit OK, it's going to tell me equals A6 right here. Now, one problem we've got is it has the quotes around equals A6. So it's going to treat it as text and put in the phrase equals A6. I want it to actually give me the number 2. Watch me mess this up. Yeah, I did. Okay. I'll go back to insert function and do a little editing. Plus A6. There you go. That'll be better. Now look, instead of giving me plus A6 or something funky, it gives me 2, which is what I want. That's the proper way to do it. So right now, we've got this formula. I go back to the insert function. You can edit from here just by going back to the insert function. If there's a function in that cell, it will pop up the wizard and let you edit. So what it's doing is it's telling me, it's doing this test. Does D5 equal B6? If it's true, give me the value out of A6, and if it's false, put in the word false. Okay? So right now it's given me 2. Now let's make this blue. It gives me false. So it knows that the answer is not blue at the moment. It knows that D5 does not equal B6, so you're not getting blue. Good enough? All this seems like, well, if I were you at this point, I'd be going, okay, big deal, right? Well, it is a big deal. I'm trying to introduce the concept so that we can do more things with it. And to do that, I'm going to go back to my insert function key. Well, let's skip that for now. I want to go back to the cell, D7, and look at the formula that's in D7 up here. You guys see that? If D5 equals B6, comma, plus A6, comma, false. This is the typical Excel syntax for how functions work. And I want to break this down for you. I'm actually going to copy it out. Let's see. I'm going to hit F2. if I hit F2, notice the function or the formula shows up in the cell down here in addition to in the edit bar up above. The nice thing about hitting F2 is it highlights the cells that are involved in the calculation, and it lets you scroll through and edit right here. And if I edit right here, look what popped up. I'm going to hit backspace once, backspace, backspace again. Look what pops up underneath. Here are these helpers. And it tells you, it's giving you help for the if function. It gives you the syntax. So if you ever get confused or lost, it gives you the syntax. I don't use the function wizard or the insert function key unless I don't know the formula that I'm looking for. You know, if I want to do something strange and I don't know how to do it, I'll go to the insert function key and use the helper. But for the most part, things like sum, if, and, you know, the basic functions that I use on a day-to-day basis, I type them in manually. For me at least, it goes a little bit faster, and it gives you a little bit more control over what you're doing. Hopefully by the time you get through with this class, you'll get to the point where you want to just type them in too. So I'm going to walk through what's going on here. If we look, the cursor is here, right between the S and the E and false. And notice that value if false is a little darker. It's bolded more than the others. If I backspace and I cross the comma here, separating A6 and false, notice the bolding just changed. It's no longer value if false that's bold, it's value if true. Excel's telling you, here's the segment of the formula that you're working on. So if I back up and cross the next comma, it changes the highlight to logical test. So what that tells you is all of the elements in a formula, in a function, are separated by commas. And by moving back and forth before or after the comma, you're telling Excel to do different things. The other basic is equals tells Excel that you're doing a formula or function. If is the formula or the function name, so it knows to go look up the function at that point and perform that specific formula's function. And then after the name you have open parentheses. Notice the open and close parentheses highlight here. Open parentheses says, here's the data. You're going to do this function to this data. So the first set is if D5 equals B6. It literally says if D5 equals B6. And if I stop there and I take all these other things out and put in an end parentheses, it's going to give me an error because it's looking for more stuff. But if I just put in the two commas, let's try this, it gave me 0. So what I've told it, and I'm now kind of digressing, is if D5 equals B6, give me 0. If it's not, give me 0. So that's kind of useless. I wanted it to give me true and false. True and false. Excel deals in trues and falses very, very well. Let's make this simple. Okay, syntax equals if, open parentheses, 1 equals 2, give me true, else give me false. So if 1 equals 2 is true, and we all know it's not, tell me that it's true. If it's not true, then tell me that it's false. Hit enter, gives me false. Let's make it if 1 equals 1, give me true, else false. It gives you true. So that's really how the if function works. There's a lot of power that goes along with that, and that's where I want to go with this example. So let's play with it a little bit more. Everybody's got the basic syntax and function at this point. The next part I want to do is I want to show you how to use the input here in the input field, and based on changing that to anything, have it go look up any number over in column A. Okay? So to do that, we can now nest our if statements. And by that I mean, if something's true, tell me it's true. If it's false, go look at the next thing. Tell me if it's true. If it's true, tell me. If it's not, go look at something else. So to do that, I'm going to hit F2. And we're going to do something very simple here. I'm going to say if D5 equals B5, tell me, if D5 equals B5, then give me A5. Else false. So all I've done is change that to say if D5, the input field, is blue and B5 is blue, give me 1 out of column A5. And it's going to give me 1. If I change this to red, it didn't work. It's still giving me that. Why did it do that? So what I did just now highlights the fact that you got to be careful when you're playing with these formulas. I'm going to hit F2. Notice what I've got. If D5 equals D5, well, by default, D5 was always going to equal D5. So I've set myself up for disaster. If D5 equals B5, notice I've changed it to B5. Okay. So if D equals B and it's false, it tells me. Okay. Now the whole point was here to nest, or to go through this whole list of items down column B. So if D5 is not the same as B5, right? If it is true, give me A5, which is 1. If it's false, I can start all over and go if new open parentheses D5 equals C5 equals, not minus, equals C5. And if that's true, then give me plus A6. I've messed up here. I don't want C5. I want B6, right? So I want to know if D5 is now equal to the next one in line, which is B6. If D5 equals B6, then give me plus A6. If not, give me false. Okay? And it gives me a little help here. My choices are false based on what I started to type in. Now, as you're doing these formulas, notice the little helper showed up under here, showing me the syntax. If, test, value of true, value of false. Notice if, open parentheses, if, second open parentheses, first close parentheses. I need another one because you have to have a close parentheses for every open parentheses, or Excel's going to give you an error. Okay? I'm going to hit enter there. My syntax is good. If it's not, it's going to tell you it's bad. I'm going to back up and take that second parentheses out, hit enter. It's going to say, hold it, you got a problem. And just specifically, Microsoft Excel found an error in the formula you entered. Do you want to accept the correction? Excel's pretty smart. It likes to think it's smarter than we are, but it's not. A lot of times, though, it will make the recommendation. And in this case, it's smart. It knows that we're missing that parentheses. Notice it says, do you want to accept the correction? And it put in that close parentheses. Well, okay, that's fine. I'm going to accept that. But you've got to check this. Don't just accept them by default, because sometimes it will do the wrong thing or something other than what you want, and you won't get the outcome that you're looking for. Okay? So right now I'm going to click yes. It fixed my error. So right now I've got, in my formula, it's longer. I've got one if, test, if true do this. Second if, test, if true do that. Otherwise false. Okay? Given that, I can put in blue and get a 1. I can put in red, get a 2. If I put in green, I get false though, because I still don't have a test for cell B7. Okay, I've tested B5, B6, but not B7. So we have to go back and modify our formula again. And we're going to add a third if. And this one is if D5 equals B7, comma, right? That's the test. Separate it from the value of true is plus A7. Value of false is, let's just say it's false. Okay? I'm going to need another close parentheses because now I have 3 open parentheses. Bang. If it's green, it's 3. Blue is 1. Red is 2. Green is 3. Now, if I can't spell, and I just put in green, gren, with only one E, I get false. They must match exact. Okay? So let's go crazy and finish our nested if statement. I'm going to add another if, a fourth if D5 equals B8, then value of true is plus A8. Value of false is, well, I think you guys have the idea here. Let's just throw in that last if right now. If D5 equals B9, comma, value of true plus A9. Good, comma, what do I do if it's false? Well, if it's false, we're out of choices because we've only got 5 things on our list. Maybe we don't want to just say false anymore. We could put in quotes, no matches. And we can give the user a little bit more information here. Notice I'm going to give an answer that's text. Before it was just the word false, which Excel realizes as something it uses in its formulas and functions. But I can type anything in there I want. I can type the sky is pink, and it would take it, but I've got to put it in quotes right here, at the beginning and at the end. Okay? So now I'm going to need a couple of more close parentheses. We can go count them. 1, open, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 5 out here. I have 3. Another way to do it rather than count them like I just did is as I arrow through them. So notice, watch the arrow here. As I arrow this, notice this one right here, the color goes on and off. Highlight, on, off. The next one, highlight, on, off. So it shows you which ones match. Now when I cover the third one, this one will go. Notice that one turns on, off. So if I now type in another one, the one here in the second if just highlighted, hit it again, the first one went dark, and that tells me I've got them all covered. Hit enter, bang, I'm good. So now I can put in any of the 5 items. Yellow gives me 4, orange gives me 5. That doesn't work. But notice I spelled it wrong and it tells me I have no matches. It doesn't just say false, it gives me a little more information. Blue, red, they all work. Okay? So that's how the if function works. It is probably the most commonly used automation tool in Excel. It is incredibly powerful. By itself, it may not seem like much, but when you start nesting them like this, it becomes much more powerful. The other thing you can do is you can, instead of just putting plus A5 in here or another if, you can go if something's true and use any of Excel's other functions in its place, and if false, any of the other functions. That's where it becomes very powerful. If true, do function XYZ. If false, do an average. It can do all kinds of things, and it's very, very powerful. Okay? So, one of the things that I just showed you is yellow. That spells yellow. Sounds like yellow, right? Phonics. But it gives me no matches because it is not an exact match to one of these items over here. Okay? What if I want to help the person using the spreadsheet? I want to make sure they don't make a mistake. And I can do that through something called data validation. Data validation is a way to limit the user's input choices and kind of force them to do to input the information correctly or with a limited number of choices so that it makes sure that your spreadsheet works. There's nothing worse than creating this great spreadsheet that's really powerful, that's really wonderful, and then give it to your boss or something and have them put in data that just won't work, and they come back and tell you, oh, it blew up, I don't know, it's not that great. So save yourself. Let's talk about data validation. I'm going to go up here to the top. Notice I have the data tab, and I've got my cursor on D5 where it says yellow right now without a W, and I'm going to go to data validation. Notice this over here, data validation, and I'm going to click on it. And it pops down this data validation wizard. And it tells me criteria. It lets me fill in what I can allow. And you can hit the drop down arrow and you can say accept any value. Well, the default is any value. Right now, cell D5 is taking any value. It let me type it in wrong and I got no matches or an error. I could limit it to just whole numbers, I could limit it to just decimals, dates, times, text of a certain length. You can create a custom list. Here's the list one. This is what I want to do. I'm going to only allow the person to enter things from my list. And I've told it that I want it to give me a drop down and force them to select from a list when they're entering data here. For a source, I can type in the things that I want to allow. Blue, comma, red, comma, green, comma, yellow, comma, orange. Okay? And I'm just going to hit enter. Notice what just changed. See this little arrow that just popped up? If I click off, the arrow goes away. If I click on that cell, here's the arrow. I drop down the arrow, and here's my whole list. Blue, red, green, yellow, orange. Now instead of spelling yellow wrong, I'm going to select yellow, and it lets me do that. Or I can select orange, or I can select red, or I can select green. Okay? I'm going to go back to data validation. Pops back up. Here's another thing that you can do. If you have a list somewhere of the data that you want to allow, you don't have to do this where I typed all this in. I'm going to take my list out. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to highlight an area. Notice what happened. Excel plugged in the data for me from B5 to B9. Remember the syntax Excel uses. Equals says here's what we're going to use. $B, it locks the reference so that it always only pulls from column B. $5, it will only pull from row 5. So I've locked my cell reference to be B5. Anything that you separate in a colon with a colon in Excel means from point A to point B. So B5 is the starting point. B9, $B, $9 is the ending point. So the source is everything in between those two cells. And notice it gives me the dotted outline showing me where that is. Okay? Hit OK. Again, I have the same drop-down list, but instead of it being driven by what I typed in, it's driven by this list right here. We could take that list and we could put it over here, and let's do that for fun. Blue, red, green, yellow, orange, black, white. That's plenty. I'm going to go back to cell D5. I'm going to change my data validation to, I'm going to take that out, delete, cell P5 through P10. I'm going to hit OK. Notice when I drop down my list, notice black and white are down here at the bottom. That's pulling from over here in column P. All right, so if I put in black, I get no matches, and I know that. And if I put in white, I get no matches, and I would expect that. But green or blue, I expect to show up. So that's how data validation works. There's some more cool tricks you can do with data validation, though. I can go now and change the input message. So when someone highlights this cell, when they activate the cell to enter data, I'm going to do that right quick. So notice I'm on D6, I go up to D5, the little down arrow shows up, and I'm going to start typing in pink. It pops up and says, hey, you got a problem. The data you entered is not valid. The user has restricted the values that can be entered in this cell. So it's not going to let me put anything in there that doesn't belong. It stopped me. I can retype, I can retry and type it again. I do it wrong again, it says, hey, you know, so it's not going to let me put in anything that's not on the list. If I hit cancel, it just stops. It goes back to the data that it was before. It forces the user to pull from your list. The other cool thing is, instead of it just saying, hey, you know, that data, you got to pull from the list, you could type in here, you must select, oh, this is the title. Selection criteria. You must select a color from the drop-down list. Hope you can type faster than me. So now watch what happens. If I'm, I just moved my cells. Don't want to do that. Okay. If I'm on D3, D4, D5, when I get here, instead of just that drop-down arrow showing up, it gives me a hint. It says, hey, selection criteria. You must select a color from the drop-down list. So it tells me I've got to go to the drop-down list instead of just trying to type something in that's going to blow up. Okay? And when I click off of it, that goes away. But as long as I'm there, my little input helper shows up, and that came from the input message tab on data validation. Settings, input message. So you would think that if you can input a message to help them enter data, you could change the error message on the back end. So you can change it, you know, stop them, not let them do anything, give them a warning. I always stop them. I don't want you to have any other choice. So here's what's going to show up when they enter some bad data. Okay, error, all caps. I'm going to scream at them. You are an idiot. Use the pull down list. Okay? Now, this is just for fun. Okay, I hope you giggle at it. But in the real world, don't put something like this in there. You know, you never know who's going to see it, your boss or whoever. But for right now, it's fun because you know Excel would never put that in there. So it highlights the fact that I indeed made that change. So when I activate the cell, my drop down shows up, my hint shows up. If I pick from the drop down, everything's good. It lets me do this all day long. The minute I come up here and try and type in pink again and hit enter, it goes, hey. Now look at that. Would Microsoft have built that kind of an error? No. So you know I did it, but it shows you that you can type anything you want in there and give them a great big long explanation of, hey, here's what's going on, and you need to use the list. Okay? Hit cancel, get out. Good? I would ask if there's questions, but you're not here. Okay, so that's the general if statement, data validation, which is a great thing. Let's move on. Let's do something really cool. Let's pick a date. May 1, 2013. And I typed that in. You'd notice I typed it in as the word May and 1, 2013. Excel's converted it, you can see in the formula bar, into the format 5-1-2013. Then down here it shows it as 1 May 2013. It shows it in more the European format. I can go and I'm going to right click and format. I'm going to format an area. Maybe not that big of an area. Format cells, and I'm just going to change it to a date format, something we're more used to seeing here. Click OK. So it shows 5/1/13. Let's call that start, stop, number of days. Okay, so if I went and I started jogging every day on 5/1/2013, and I did the exercise and jogged every day until 6/1/2013. Okay, so I did it for a month. Oops, not 2103. Got to do this right. 2013. Typing skills on a laptop, the keyboard's a little funky. So I did this for a month, 5/1 to 6/1. Excel is a very powerful tool. I can add and subtract dates and times. So take the end date minus the start date, and notice it gives me 13100. I'm going to go right click and change that column, format it from a number back into, or from a date format back into a number format, and click OK. It tells me I did this activity, the jogging, every day for 31 days. So it just added and subtracted days for me. Let's change this. 7/15/13. Notice it changes it. It was 75 days I did it. So whatever date you put in there, it'll calculate the number of days in between the two. Very cool, very powerful. Let's think, what could we use that for in Excel? All right. What if we had a, I'm going to change my headers up here at the top, except I wanted the one that says number of days. What if we had, and I'm going to grab all this and move it, invoice date, and I'm going to actually move it over this column. Invoice date. I'm going to move this up here at the top. I'm making this up as I go, so forgive me for taking a moment. Let's see, customer, invoice number. So I've got customer Bell okay, I've got these customers over here, and they are invoice number okay, I'm making up numbers, okay? Let's say we invoice the customer on Okay, let's say we invoice this customer on 3/1/2013, this guy on 3/13/2013. Well, I like that formatting a little bit better. I'm going to use the Format Painter tool to copy that around. Okay, 3/13, 4/2, 4/28, and 5/15. Okay? So now what I want to do is come up here and I've got, let's call this today's date. It doesn't fit, so I'm going to right hand justify it, make it fit. So let's say today's date is 9/10/2013. So I have these invoices from these customers, and let's say they're outstanding. The guy still owes me money. I billed them, the invoice date was 3/1, and today's 9/10. It's been months and months and months. Well, how many days is that really? So I can tell him. So what I want to do is go plus today's date minus the invoice date, and I know that I have to go change the formatting. It's been 193 days. Now I can use the fill handle down here, the little dot. Notice how that my pointer turns from like the red cross symbol into a black X, and I can drag that down, and watch, it's not going to work. Boom, you get all kinds of garbage here. Why is that? If I use the F2, you can see visually that it's pointing to cell C13 minus C17. Hit escape, hit F2. C14 minus C18. Well, that doesn't work. It's not what I want. Okay. We're going to remember our fixed references. If I hit F2 and go in and edit what's going on in this cell, I want to lock my reference to C13 for today's date. And if I do that by putting in $C, $13, I could have hit F4 though as well. You can drag this down, and now all the formulas work. So now if I point here at 181, it's today's date C13 minus C18. Go down one more, it's still today's date minus C19, today's date minus C20, today's date minus C21, and so on. Okay? So that works. So now all of a sudden you've got me calculating the number of days since an invoice was issued. Let's say they're outstanding. Outstanding meaning they're unpaid. And I wanted to categorize things. I'm going to change today's date to give me something a little more meaningful. Let's say it's 5/31/2013. So I've got invoices that are, 16 days old, 33 days old, 59 days old, 79, and 91. So one common thing that's done in business is to create an aging of accounts receivable. So we can look at this shortened list that we just created, and let's say this is a list of our open accounts receivable, and this is the number of days old they are. So now I want to age them. Let's say they are. So invoices, if you want to calculate an aging of them, are usually looked at in terms of what's current. So current means invoices that are not beyond terms. Let's assume in our case that terms are 30 days. We give our customers 30 days to pay. So this guy down here, the 16 days, he's current. He's okay. He doesn't owe us the money yet. This guy at 33 days, Smith, he's just beyond terms. White is more than just beyond terms. He's a little bit, more than a little. Gong at 79 is kind of beyond terms, way beyond terms, and Bell falls into what I consider to be a danger zone. So, all right, so we have invoices that are current. We have invoices that are overdue. Let's say 31 to 60 days. And I'm going to make my columns a little wider here to make these fit. I'm going to put overdue 61. Oh, I take that back. Overdue 31 to 60. Overdue 1 to 30 days. Got to put in days. There we go. Then we've got overdue 61 to 90 days. Put in days. Over F2, over 90 days past due. Make all my columns fit. Okay, so now my goal would be to put each of these in the correct column that they would fall into. So what just dawned on me is I've missed something very important. I'm going to have to insert a column here by moving my data over, and I need the invoice amount, right? Because I want to know how many dollars are sitting out there in receivables. So let's say this guy owes me $1,245. This guy owes me $751, $2,854, $9,005.54. I'm going to reformat those real quick here to show them as being, real dollar amounts with decimal places. Okay. So, in a perfect world, I could do cool things here like underline this, make my columns wide enough to fit everything. Okay, I could put, let's see, if it's current, maybe I want to give myself a clue here that green is good and these are some sort of caution, and way past due is, this is bad. Red's great to highlight that, but if you ever try and print this out with the red over the black text, it doesn't print real good, just an FYI. So you can color code stuff. And old school, for those people who haven't taken my class, to get the dollar amount of the invoices in each category, I'd have to manually go in here and go plus this, right? Because it's 16 days, it's current, less than 30. 1 to 30 days overdue means it's 31 days or more. So do I have anything that's 31 days or more? This one. So it would be plus this. Do I have anything that's between 30 and 60 days? This one right here, 59 days. So this would go in this column as well. 79 days is above that, so this is 31 to 60 days. This would be 61 to 90 days, which would be this column. Okay, and I'm actually going to change the conditions of my test because I don't have any data that's going to put anything out here. I'm just going to pull this. Let's see. Yeah, overdue by 31 to 60, over 90 days. That's the correct language for that because it's more than 90 days past due. More than 60 days past due. Let's be smart about this. Okay, so there's all of my invoices put in each in their own category. Let's say I want to get a total, what I have out there. So I underline this and I'm going to do a totals. Do you guys remember the sum function? If we go to formulas, auto sum, the auto sum will come up and sum a column of numbers for you. Hit the formatting. Notice the syntax equals sum, S-U-M, the function, open parentheses, F17 colon F21. Now remember what I told you, the colon means everything in between. So it's going to go from F17 to F21 and it's going to total it. Hit F2, it gives you the visual representation, shows you what's going on. Okay, so I did that by hitting the auto sum key on the formula bar. Those of you who are astute and remember, I put it on my quick access toolbar. Notice that it only goes as high as the top cell where there's data in it. It doesn't assume you want to do more than that. So I got to drag it to make that work, hit enter. The other thing you could do is I could just grab the fill handle and copy this over, and it's going to copy all of the, that formula and total each of those columns and give me the total. Total receivables, total receivables outstanding, and I could again use the sum function and I could sum across the different categories, current, 30, 60, 90, and my total receivables are $13,909. I'm going to double underline that, okay? Total receivables, $13,909. Good. Is this what we're trying to do in this class? I hope you're all screaming no at this point and that you know there's something wrong. These are just, yes, they're formulas. But what if this all changes? What if nothing happens and then I change the date to 6/30/2013? Well, all these dates changed. But did these move around? Do they end up in the correct column? Notice this one here should belong in the column over. This one belongs over here. This one now belongs here, and this one belongs there. There'd be nothing in this column. Well, that's not going to work. We want this to be a tool that automatically updates when someone changes the input field. If that's our input field, I'm going to go ahead and mark it in blue just so we know. Okay? How can we do that? Let's think. What have we learned so far? The sum function and the if statement, right? So I'm going to do some things here. I'm going to put 30 up here, right? Meaning they're less than 30 days old. And I'm going to copy that formatting. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I'm going to put 90 in there again. Okay? I'm just putting numbers in. This again is input information that helps me, and I'm going to use it in my if statement. So remember our if function. I'm going to type it in, equals if. Notice the little helper pops out. I can do an if or an if error. I'm going with the if. My logical test is if the number of days, E17, is less than my limit to be current, which is 30 days up here, comma, what do I do if it's true? Plus the amount of the invoice. What if it's false? If it's false, I want to put in nothing. Let's leave it blank. See if that works, okay? By just leaving it blank after the second comma. It gave me a number. It gave me 0. Okay, if I copy this down, is it going to work? No. I'm going to have a problem. $2,854. See, notice it's pulling this amount even though it's 89 days. Because it's moved off of the 30-day limit that I wanted up above, and it's saying, is it less than the word current? Well, I don't know how it's doing that math, but it is. What we've got to remember here is that the F14 up here, we need to lock that reference. Okay? So I need to put a $sign in front of the 14 so that it stays on row 14 this way. Now later on, I'm going to copy this formula over to column G and column H. So I want to not lock the column reference, the F, so I'm only going to put the $sign in front of the 14. And then I can copy it down, and I got 0. Why would I get 0? Do I have any of these number of days past due that are less than 30? No, I don't. They're all greater than 30. So this should be 0. Okay. Now let's copy this to the right one column. And I got 4,134, 4,100. This doesn't look right, does it? Why is that happening? Let's go to the first cell, hit F2 and edit it. Well, remember the problem we had before? It was referring to the number of days up above that I wanted to be less than. Okay, that's good. But what I'm testing is if F17, if the number that's current is less than G. Well, if the number that's current, this is wrong. I wanted column E. So that's a problem. So if we go back over to here and we lock our reference in column E to where we're always looking at the number of days. Remember, I'm going back to the column F to edit it because I want to be able to copy this all the way across through all of these columns. Okay? So if I lock that in and then copy it over, let's see if it's working. If E17, which is right, is less than G, which is right, plus D17. D is the date. No, that's wrong. I want C. So I'm kind of showing you how I mentally go through and edit my formulas as I build them. So if I lock the reference to column C for the invoice amount, hit enter, I think I've taken care of everything. I can copy these all the way down. And then I can copy this across. And notice I pick up anything that is less than 60 days here. Okay? Is this less than 60? Yes. Any of the rest of these? No. So that's why I'm only getting one, and my total is $54. Good? Okay. Let's copy this across one more. Let's hit F2, make sure it's right. So if E17, number of days, is less than H now, which is 90, okay, because I'm in the next column, then give me the amount. Okay, that's good. So let's see if it's working right. Is this less than 90? No. Is this? No. Is this? Yes. Is this? Yes. Is this? Yes. Okay, so it's working right. It's given me all of those amounts in the right places. However, I have $54 now in two columns. Is that what I want? Does it belong in two columns? It's less than 90 days, but it's also less than 60. And in an aging, it only shows up in one column. So I need something to say, if it's less than 60, or I need it to say, is it less than 60, but also more than 90? So can you think of a way where we can set up an if statement where it says, is it less than 60, but more than 90? It's going to be a nested if, and it's going to be a double if statement. So a double if statement. Let's see if I can do this right the first time. We'll start here. So let's test first. Let's see if it falls less than 90 first, okay? So if E17 is less than H14, then instead of just giving me the value of the invoice, I want to change the test. And I'm doing this up here in the formula bar. I now need a new test that says if E17, and I'm going to stick with the locked column reference, E17 is greater than, and what do I want? I want 60, which is here, G14. And again, I want to have a locked reference to, I want to, excuse me, I want to lock the reference to the column, to the row, I'm sorry, to the row, 14. So if E17 is greater than, if the number of days is, let's start at the beginning. First test, is the number of days less than 90? If true, then is the number of days greater than 60? Okay? And if both of those are true, then give me the value of the invoice plus C17. And if both of those are wrong, then give me 0. Okay, remember I have two ifs, so I need two ending parentheses. I got false. Why did I get false? Okay, let's see what's going on here. Let's walk through our tests. If E17 is less than H14, E17 here, H14 here, is it less than? No. So it immediately false, false, false. So remember the format. I'm going to hit F2. Here's the test. Here's our helper. So if, logical test, value if true, comma, if. This whole new if is the value if true. We never have a value if false out here at all. So notice comma, if, and it's got its own open and close parentheses. That's all this second if. After its closed parentheses, I need to have a comma and a 0 for the value if the first if is false. And if I hit enter there, now I get 0 instead of getting false. And if you look up in the formula bar, you can see if first test, if it's true, do the second test and do these things. If it's false, skip outside of this closed parentheses and do 0. All right, now I should be able to copy that down. There you go. Notice what happens. In this scenario where we'll walk through the tests. If E21, number of days, is less than 90, it is, okay. If that's the case, then do the next test. Is E21 greater than G14? Is it greater than 60? No. So it gives me 0. Okay? So I've had to do this double test to get there. Is it less than 90? Is it greater than 60? There's the formula to do it. It looks a lot like that. So there's the double test. Now, once I get over in this column, I need to know if it's more than 60 days, right? Which is more than 90 days past due. What would the formula look like for that? If number of days, right? And I'm going to hit F4, okay? If I hit F4, it locks the reference both for columns and rows. If I hit it again, it just locks it to the row, which is not what we want because I want it to roll down. If I hit it again, it locks just the columns, which is what I want. I want it to stay in this number of days column. Hit F4 again, it takes all of the locked references out. I'm going to move it back to the one I want. Okay, if E17 is greater than number of days, and I want to lock my rows this time this way so that it always refers to the 90. If that is true, then plus the amount of the invoice. If not, then give me 0. So this is greater than 90, it would have a number, and it would only be those two invoices, right? Good. So notice I get to the same place I was originally when I had filled this in manually. And instead of doing it manually though, I have come up with a formula that if the dates change, and I'm going to go ahead and change today's date and pretend it's 5/31/13, notice everything moves back into their appropriate column. The number of days change, and the actual dollar amounts move into the appropriate columns. Okay? We still have a problem. Does anybody see it? 54 shows up twice in this scenario. Why? Because we only did the double test in the second column and the 31 to 60 day column. We never did fix it in the over 30 day column, the 31 to 60 days overdue. Okay, so let's fix it there. How about I teach you a new function to do that? We already know how to do it with the and, or I'm sorry, with the if. We've done the if with the double if here. There's another function called an and. And what that is if this test and that test are both true, then do something. Okay? So here's how the and works. Equals AND. Notice it pops up, it gives us the little helper. I'm just going to continue to type. Open parentheses. Logical argument 1, comma, logical argument 2, comma, argument 3, and so on. So I can test more than 2. I can test 3, 4, 5, 6, but they all have to be true for me to get a true answer. Okay? Here we go. I'm going to change my if up here. Equals if. And now I'm going to do the and, because I want both things to be true. A and D. Notice I've got a function, the if function, open parentheses, and I go right to the second function. I open a parentheses for that. So I'm combining my Excel functions together to give me added power. Notice the helper shifted from the if help to the and help. Okay? So, if and, my first test is this number less than 60? Okay? And the second test is if this number is greater than 30. And I'm going to close my parentheses. Notice what happened. I'm going to back up a space. I'm on the and helper, close parentheses, and now I switch back to the if helper. Okay? So if it's true, if it's truly less than 60 but greater than 30, what do I want to have happen here? Got to have the comma for the if so that it moves to the value of true. I want to go plus the invoice amount, comma, value of false, 0. If they're not both true, it's 0. Now we have to remember on our test, we want to make sure that our E column remains locked and our G17, the row column, the row, not the column, the rows remain locked. Column lock, row lock. Good. Now I can copy that and if and combo down into both places or down the whole column, and notice my extra 54 disappeared. So the 54 invoice only appears in the row that it belongs in. We could have done this same and solution in this column here, in the H column, but instead we did an if it's true and if A is true and if B is true. This one just says if A is true and B is true, then do this. Slightly different syntax, two different formulas. But again, think about it that I'm doubling up my formulas in both places. Over here I'm using an if with an if, and here I'm using an if with an and. Let's change this date back to 6:30 and see what happens. Everything moved back. Everything ended up right where I expected it to be. No problems there. Good. What if I back up even further? Notice that this can't be because the invoice date is 5/15, but oddly our 12/45 doesn't show up. That's okay because this is wrong. What's the other thing we could do with this? What if we wanted to change our parameters? 15 days, 30 days, 30 days, 60 days. Now we've got a problem here because our over 30, under 60 isn't showing up. How do we fix that? I'm going to wager that if I simply copy the AND formula over, that it will do it. Oh no, we've made a major faux pas. Okay, well, let's try this. Oh, it's because they're the same. Okay, no problem. So, if E17 is less than H14, and if it's greater than, so that should be a 0. Let's pick one that we know it's going to be true. If E19 is less than H14, and it is not. Oh, you need 60 here. There you go. It's an input error. You always got to stop and think through what you're doing and double check your data. Once you get it to work, you're good to go. I bet this now solves the other problem we had a moment ago. If I change this back to 4/30, 2013, this top one still disappears. Okay, didn't work, but what the heck. Still gets you where you want to be. Okay, if I move forward 6:30, everything moves to the right. 7, my own fault. Push the num lock. 7/31/13. Notice everything just keeps moving to the right until I get them all the way over there. Okay? Good. So, any questions on that? Can't ask that, can I? But that's a great example of how to work ifs and how to add and subtract dates, and a quick reminder of fixed cell references and some function. Okay? Remember what we did up above. We have the data validation. Data validation is a great thing. Think about this one for a second. Let's do a data validation down below. Cell. Account balance. If I ask for an account balance, let's do it slightly, yeah. Account balance. Cash account balance. Let's say it's $100. Okay? I have $100 in my cash account. Does that tell you everything you need to know? No, you need to know if it's a debit or a credit. Right? So let's use data validation to help someone know that we're looking for a debit or a credit in this column. Data, data validation, settings, list, debit, credit, and now we can their two choices are debit and credit. So it's a $200 swing if I have a $100 debit versus a $200 credit, right? Well, let's think about this in terms of what can we do to help automate the spreadsheet we just did up above. Here we've calculated, and you guys probably remember this from 151A or 1A, this is an aged receivables. Oftentimes we take an aged receivable and we calculate allowance for bad debts, right, based off of an aging of receivables. So historical bad debt percentage. So if my historical bad debt percent is 3%, my allowance for doubtful, I'm going to abbreviate, my allowance for doubtful account would be the 13,909 times 3%, right? Oh, I'm doing it wrong, aren't I? Let's say, because there should be a different percentage for each one. I hope you remember this. Think about it. And that's part of why I color-coded my aging up top. If I've got a guy who's 16 days from the invoice date, odds are he's probably going to pay me, right? I don't have any indication that he's not. If you are 31 to 60 days from the invoice date, there might be some doubt in my mind as to whether or not you're going to pay me. If you're 61 to 90 days beyond the invoice date, I might really be starting to worry. And once you go over 90 days beyond the invoice date, you know, I have a real serious doubt that you're going to pay me. So typically, in this sort of a scenario, they would apply different allowance for doubtful account percentage. So let's say this one is 0.5%, and I'm making these numbers up as I go. 0.005, more digits, there you go. And let's say this one is 1% and 2% and no, 10%, 25%. This seems more reasonable. So these would also be part of your input field. So on this $54, I would think 0.5% of that would probably someday be uncollectible. If it's 31 to 60 days from invoice date, probably about 1% would end up becoming uncollectible. If it's 61 to 90 days, probably 10% of that will become uncollectible. Once they go over 90%, it drops off dramatically. Those people are just going to not pay you a big percentage of the time. So to calculate my allowance for bad debt, what it should be is I could take, I'm going to move some stuff around and give myself some room here. My allowance would be the balance in that category times the applicable rate. Okay, and then I would take the summation and add them all up, and my total allowance for bad debt is probably going to be, not probably, my estimate is that it's $505. Out of this $13,909, I'm probably not ever going to see $505 of it. Okay? So that's my estimate of my allowance for bad debt, or for allowance for doubtful accounts. The book calls it doubtful accounts. So let's automate based on a little help from the data validation tool. Let's say my allowance account balance is $100 debit. Should my allowance have a debit balance? Not typically. No, it should have a credit balance. So for this first one, I'm just going to change that. If I want my allowance account to have a $505 balance, which would be a credit, right? Accounts receivable is a debit. The allowance would be a credit. my current balance is plus this. My adjustment needed to get me to the $505 is how much? 505 minus 100. I need a $405 credit to my allowance for doubtful accounts to get me to the 505 total. So your journal entry would be bad debt expense, and your credit would be to allowance for doubtful accounts, and it would be 405.21 and 405.21. Okay, that would be my entry. Now think about it though. If something went wrong and my prior estimate was too low, and I wrote off a specific account that took my balance, instead of being a $100 credit balance, which is its normal balance, to a $100 debit balance. Can I use any of the things we've learned today to automate this decision, to make a decision and automate this calculation so that it gives me a $605 debit to bad debt expense and a $605 credit to allowance for doubtful accounts to get my balance in the allowance account to the right amount? And the answer to that is yes. What you have to do is something as simple as this. Notice, current balance is $100. Well, equals if E31, right? If the debit or credit data validation box equals debit, sorry, credit would be normal. If E31 equals credit, then plus the allowance, else minus the balance in the account. Okay? And it gave me an error. Why? Because I did not put the CR in the test. Remember, that's text. And I got to tell it it's text to test for it, otherwise it's trying to test for some formula. Okay? So watch what's going on here. The current balance is a $100 debit. It's supposed to have a normal balance of a credit, so that's technically a negative $100, right? If I change this to a credit, notice this changed. So if I have a normal credit balance and I need to get to 505, I only have to credit it another 405 to get to the desired balance. If I have a $100 debit balance, to get to the desired 505 credit, I would need a credit of 605. Good? So my bad debt expense, now I'm going to automate my journal entry. I'm going to even write the journal entry for you. Plus the amount that I calculate, no matter what it is, and plus the debit, make your debits equal your credits. Now if I switch the debit and credit, it flows all the way through and it changes my journal entry. I've totally automated this. It might not be as neat and as orderly and laid out with descriptions as it needs to be to give it to someone else to do, but the basic formulas are working. And this could get you a long way. I've written, see, look what we've done. I've written a tool that will let you automate the calculation or automate the preparation of an accounts receivable aging. I've added the extra component of calculating the allowance for doubtful accounts off of it. And I've automated the journal entry that goes with it based on someone inputting the current balance. Highlight that in blue. Okay, all I need, input the date, check the bad debt allowance percentages, see if they're appropriate, input the current account balance with a debit or credit, and it spits out your journal entry. Bang, you're done. Could I assign this to someone else? You know, yes, in a heartbeat. Would I clean it up and put instructions and directions in it? Absolutely. So as you tackle something like this for homework, remember input area, highlight your input cells, always utilize data validation where you can. If you limit your user to only certain things, then they can only give you a correct answer back. All right? If you just leave it free form, they can plug in anything they want, and you could have, you know, your formulas won't work, and you could have the whole thing blow up, and you end up with egg on your face, even though you're the smartest person in the room and you really made a good tool. Okay? Remember, nice, clear spreadsheet, good input areas. This needs some directions over here telling people what to do and what the different colored areas mean. And then if I set this up, this would be my output area, or maybe it would go down here and this is my output area. Something like that, right? So, or you could, since this is so short, if I had a lot of customers or a lot of outstanding invoices, it'd be different. But since there's only 5, this could be short. I could do this as a one-page output, something like that. Okay? Remember again, name the tab, get your name on it somewhere on the spreadsheet, get your name in the title to the file, so when you submit it, I know who it's from. Okay? Please bring any questions you have to class. Take a look at this and then go to chapter 15 in the book and take a stab at the chapter 15 homework, okay? And come to class with a viable solution that you can present, and we'll go through the presentation process and the evaluation process as a group in class. Look forward to seeing you there. Have a good day.